I have just one aim for my talk today, and that is to show you why we should start caring more about stuff like this, and also the places they come from. This is actually a piece of a meteorite. I got it as a gift from some dear friends and colleagues when I got my PhD, so obviously it's highly precious to me. It has all kinds of personal and sentimental value to it. You don't probably have much reasons to care about this particular rock, and if my friends would have given me just any ordinary rock, that could have been just kind of disappointing, because what makes this rock so cool is that it came from space. Think about the stories it could tell, the distance it traveled, where it was, right before ending up on this planet and finally into my possession. But space is full of stuff like this, and many of them are much bigger and much more impressive. So why should we care for all of them? They're mostly just, after all, dead rocks floating out there. Well, as an environmental philosopher, I do believe they have all kinds of environmental and aesthetic value to them, but it's not easy to care for them based on that alone. This may sound a bit superficial, but let's face it, I care about this rock and not the others because it belongs to me. It's now part of my story, and I can imagine a little story for it. There's a special relation between me and this rock. Think about it. If you want to say something really romantic, it doesn't really do the trick to say something like, "Hey, look at the moon and the stars. They must have all kinds of environmental value to them, right?" Yeah, that's kind of weak. It doesn't really do the trick. Not very romantic. And I admit, philosophers are not that romantic always. But let me introduce you to an idea that is really romantic. And it comes from a surprising place. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty. Just bear with me. It says, "The exploration and use of outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, shall be carried out for the benefit and in the interest of all countries, irrespective of their degree of economic or scientific development, and shall be the province of all mankind." This means that the moon and other celestial bodies belong to everyone, so even you, they're giving it to you. I think this is hands down the most romantic international treaty out there, and it gets better, because it also says outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, is not subject to national appropriation by claims of sovereignty, by means of use or occupation, or by any other means. So it's literally saying, "Darling, I give you the moon and the stars, and no one's gonna take them away from you." Yeah, that's good. Gets your heart pounding, doesn't it? That's romantic. Okay, so now you know. Space belongs to you. That feels kind of nice, doesn't it? All this time, space has belonged to you. It's like finding an old jacket and discovering you left some money in its pocket. It makes you feel like a millionaire. But more importantly, there's now a special relation between you and space. It belongs to you. So you also have a reason to care for it. So in one big romantic gesture, the United Nations promised that space belongs to everyone. However, romantic gestures can also be quite dangerous. There's a reason why all the great romantic stories out there are also tragic. There's jealousy and conflict between lovers, and I assure you, space is a tragic story just like that. The Outer Space Treaty is particularly dangerous, not because of what it says, but what it doesn't say. It doesn't tell us exactly how should we share the things found in space, and it doesn't give much limitations to how things found in space should be used. We don't need to go any further than our orbits to see why this is problematic. Now, more and more people are wanting their share of the orbits. And it's not only countries, it's now also private companies that want to put their satellites up there. So people are looking to make a profit. Greed has come its way in, as it often does. As a result, our orbits are already in danger of becoming a very hazardous garbage dump. You see, not everything that we put up there comes down safe. It can stay there for hundreds of years. And when this space debris collides with other objects, even more space debris is created, potentially leading to a cascade effect of dangerous, high-velocity smaller objects destroying everything in their path, making the orbits practically useless. So the more stuff we put up there, the greater the risks of this effect, called the Kessler syndrome. This means that the orbits have a safety limit, and thus they can be oversaturated with things. And it doesn't stop there. Some are already looking to make a profit by mining asteroids or even the moon, hoping to tap in on the untold riches provided by space. Now you may ask, how big of a problem is this really? Like, isn't space big enough that there has to be enough stuff for everyone? And this is a fair question. Okay, we all know that space is vast. It's huge. They don't call it space for nothing. But not all of the solar system, not to mention anything beyond that, is available to us, at least not anytime soon. The places and resources that would be accessible to humans are, in fact, quite limited. I know this may sound a little bit surprising, because maybe the first intuition is that, hey, space is so big, there has to be enough stuff for everyone, but it's not really the case. At least not if we look at the things that matter the most, the things that we can find in the near term technologically reachable in our solar system, which means basically the moon, perhaps later on Mars, some near-Earth asteroids, and also Earth orbits. And from these places, you can find everything that is practically accessible and useful to humans. And these things you are now pretty fast. So the really valuable things in space are in all practical terms scarce. And when things are scarce, they can also be highly contested. This can lead to increased competition, uncontrolled resource grab, and even geopolitical conflicts. For example, water ice. It could be used for life support or fuel production. So it's very precious, but it's a very limited resource that can be only found few and far between in places like the loose permanently shadowed craters. So it's not unlikely that we will see a space race to gain control over water ice. It's like a children's birthday party, actually, when you think of it. Everyone who's been to a children's birthday party knows that it will be total chaos and anarchy if there's not a good system of who gets the first piece of the birthday cake, or if there's no adult overseeing that everyone gets a piece. Except, in this birthday party, everyone has guns. So the fight over the biggest piece of the cake can turn very, very ugly very, very fast. To me, this is a pretty scary and dangerous pathway. We really don't want spacefaring nations, many of them with a significant nuclear arsenal, fighting over sparse resources. The problem is that the current international space legislation and regulation is not quite there to prevent these problems. The Outer Space Treaty is extremely vague about many important things. For instance, it fails to regulate what exactly can be done in specific space environments. It talks about the moon and other celestial bodies, so it singles out the moon, which is nice enough, but then it throws in all the other planets and stars and a bunch of other things in the entire universe. To me, that seems pretty vague. Like, how can you work with that? What I think you really need is specific rules for specific space environments to fully appreciate the diversity of environments in the solar system, and also to avoid the uncontrollable resource grab and increasing geopolitical tensions. So in this sense, lack of regulation is bad news for you, but it's also bad news for numerous future generations, for your children and their children. And it's not only the things we may or may not lead the future generations with, like ruined orbits or depleted resources, they also inherit our legal, economic, and political circumstances and systems. And in this way, we are always putting future generations on a trajectory, a pathway, with institutions and systems that are sticky, arrangements that are quite difficult to get rid of afterwards. The astronomer Martin Ellis calls this the founder effect. So the first comers will set their rules, and it's difficult to change those rules afterwards. So if we allow some kind of free-for-all scenario, the first comers and those who claim the prize first, they will set their system of property and their system of managing space resources. And I think that instead we better set the future generations on a pathway that really endorses cooperation, deliberation, and also preserves value for the future. So, how can we do this? How can we be the heroes of this story? To solve many of these problems, we'd need more coordinated action and better ground rules. But what are the rules that we want? I think that to get a better sense of this, we need to first start dreaming big about space. Because whatever we do now, we will set some space future. And what kind of future that is, it actually depends on you. So imagine, what does it look like? And more importantly, what do you want it to look like? But there can be no dream if we are not aware of these issues first. So if this is the first time that you ever heard that space actually belongs to you, that it's the province of all humankind, there's a good chance that your friends don't know about it either. So how could everyone have an equal claim to space if not everyone is even aware that space belongs to everyone? So the first step towards solving a problem is to identify that there is a problem in the first place. These challenges are huge, for sure. But I think there are many reasons to remain hopeful. With space, we are still mostly on top of things, at least compared to many other problems we are facing. I spent 5 years working on climate ethics, and I can tell you, climate change is a whole different game. With climate change, what makes it extremely tricky to deal with climate change is that our societies, our economies, our whole way of life have been so tightly linked to fossil fuels and carbon-heavy industries. But human societies don't yet have large-scale vested interest in the exploitation of the space environment. And changing plans for space missions doesn't really involve most people having to change the way that they live their lives. And this makes it far more feasible to create an efficient, sustainable, and just system of regulating space activities now. What is really tragic and also frustrating about climate change is that people have been aware of it for a very long time. Imagine in 60 years ago, they created better regulation. How much easier it could be to deal with climate change now. And I think that it would be terribly sad if we miss a similar opportunity now with space. This thought makes me both kind of anxious, but also hopeful. And for these reasons, I think we should start caring a little bit more about what happens in space. In the 1960s, when the Outer Space Treaty was first written, nobody knew who would win the space race. And that made it possible to agree that no country could claim space as theirs. Right now, we don't know who will win the next space race, who will be the one to claim the nearby resources. So the idea I want to leave you with is that there is a golden window of opportunity to act now, to change the future now, to raise awareness now, and create better rules now. But this comes with a void. This window of opportunity is narrowing quickly, because very soon, more and more powerful parties will have vested interest in space, and some already can't do. I think it's important that we don't take humanity's expansion to outer space solely as a technological or engineering challenge. Sure, to succeed, things like spaceflying, they require some of the brightest technological thinking that humankind can produce. But I think it's equally true that we need the best ethical, societal, political, and cultural thinking to guide our space future to a sustainable path. So, it is required that we kind of express our will on what is done in space, where, on what terms, with what limitations, and that we hold our decision makers accountable on what happens in space. Because if we don't, we risk an undesirable and a tragic future. So if space indeed is the province of all humankind, we need to start taking better care of it and think about the space future we want and deserve. And finally, turn this story back from tragedy to romance. Thank you so much.